by night. May Allah protect us and vice versa as well. So now, what type of fitnas is the Prophet ﷺ talking about? What type of fitnas is he foretelling? He's telling us about fitnas that will come, that will be fitnas of belief, fitnas of theology, fitnas of i'tiqad. Now, what does that mean? So, what does it mean to be a Muslim? Does anyone know what the definition of Iman is? If you don't, no problem. But, yeah. Okay, that's definitely part of it, yeah. So the official definition is التصديق بجميع ما جاء به النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم goes on إجمالا فيما علم إجمالا تفصيلا فيما علم تفصيلا غير مقتد بعلامة من علامات التكذيب. Long story short, it means that you believe in everything that the Prophet ﷺ came with. Okay, so that's what it takes a person to be a Muslim. What does it take for a person to, na'udhu may Allah protect us all, leave the fold of Islam? So remember, believing in Islam, you have to believe in everything. At-tasdiqu bi-jami'i, everything that the Prophet ﷺ brought. What does it take to leave the fold of Islam? Does it mean that a person has to disbelieve in everything? Not necessarily. If anyone has ever studied any formal logic or anything like that, in order to get the opposite of a statement like that, just disbelieving in any one major thing. So if a person disbelieves in one major thing, then unfortunately that could potentially put them outside the fold of Islam. To give an example, in Tucson, Arizona, there was a person who claimed to be a prophet of Islam. His name was Rashid Khalifa. Has anyone heard of the name before? Okay, Tucson, Arizona. He claimed to be a prophet of Islam. This was recent. He passed away in in the recent years, some decades ago or something, not too long ago. And he said that he discovered this amazing miracle of the number 19 in the Quran. He said the Quran is encoded in the number 19. So he had maybe some engineering background or math background, and then he said he discovered this. But then he said there's two ayat that don't fall under this code. The last two ayat of Surah Tawbah. So he said that these are not part of the Quran. I don't accept these as part of the Quran. And anybody that believes in his message, they're called the submitters, that's their name. They have to accept the Quran, but they have to reject those two verses. Na'udhu billah. So now, what is that status of a person's Islam then? Unfortunately, even if they're praying 5 times a day, may Allah protect us, but if they disbelieve in any part of the Quran, that would put them outside the fold of Islam. Unfortunately, that's just the case. So similarly, as we said, believing means that you believe in everything that the Prophet ﷺ brought. Disbelieving means a person disbelieves in even so much as one major thing. We're not talking about small issues of difference of opinion or anything like that. We're talking about like major theological things. So keeping that in mind, how is it that a person is a believer by day, disbeliever by night, as the hadith says? We said, literally, that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. That means that the person adopts some belief, maybe not even their entire belief code, but some belief that essentially puts them outside the fold of Islam. So now, how is this relevant to us today? So now we know that unilaterally Allah Ta'ala condemns homosexuality in the Quran, and Hadith, of course, as well, it's condemned. Now, a person, if they, na'udhu billah, may Allah protect us all, engages in that, may Allah protect us, then they could still be a Muslim. They're involved in a big sin, and of course, inshallah, they have to do tawbah, but then it doesn't put them outside the fold of Islam. If a person, though, believes that it's okay, that would potentially endanger a person's iman and put them outside the fold of Islam because they're disbelieving in a major tenet, because the Quran unilaterally, unequivocally states that it's something inappropriate, something that's condemned. So if a person believes that it's okay, that is a different thing. So we said one thing is participating in it, may Allah protect us. That's a major sin, okay? And a person would have to do tawbah. But if a person believes it's okay, regardless if they participate or not, that could be detrimental to their iman and put them even outside the fold of Islam. May Allah protect us all. So now, why is this so important? This is important because now we said that it's ubiquitous, it's all around us. On top of that, you may say, well, the people that I know that are actually involved in this are not that many. Okay, maybe that's true. But something that is just as dangerous, it's not so much about always the people that are involved in it. It's about the people that regard it to be acceptable. So there may be some Muslims who, may Allah protect us all, say that, okay, I'm not involved in it, but I don't think it's a big deal. Why? Because it's just love. You shouldn't stop a person from loving. So I don't think it's a big deal. So that a person like that, even if they're not involved in it, may Allah protect us, still that could potentially be detrimental to their iman, put their iman in danger, because they're believing that something that the Quran explicitly condemns is permissible. So this is now not just a practical thing, an amali thing. This becomes a theological thing, an imani thing. So that's why this is so important. So now what we'll do is that we talked about how this is all around us, children's programming, things like that. We talked about that. So we said there's a need to counter that narrative. So the question is that we're countering that narrative by speaking about it. And of course, we'll speak about the Prophet of Allah, Lut alayhi salam. But how did we get here? So the way that we got here, so we'll talk about a few things that are, I guess, kind of underlying themes in our Western society, and then we'll understand a little bit more about how we got here. The first thing is that the main thing that grounds our moral philosophy in the West is a philosophy called, can anyone tell me? Liberalism. Right? Liberalism is ingrained in the Constitution. The writers of the Constitution were heavily influenced by John Locke, who is considered to be the father of liberalism. So the main idea of liberalism, it sounds great, that every person has the right to be free. Okay, who thinks that this sounds good? Come on, I think everyone should think that this sounds good. Everyone has the right to be free. Of course, that sounds good. But the problem is that if this is the person's only code that they have, that everyone has the right to be free. Even in the Constitution, it says we hold these truths to be self-evident. Each person has inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Has anyone heard this before? Part of the Constitution, right? Or Declaration of Independence. So pursuit of happiness, that essentially is a reflection of liberalism, because a person has to be free. And part of being free is pursuing whatever makes them happy. So at surface level, it doesn't sound like this is a bad thing. If a person wants to eat a burger, okay, halal burger, inshallah, let them eat a burger. If a person wants to, whatever they want to do, it's not a big deal. But the problem is that for a Muslim, this is not the only code that we have. So this is something that's nice, but a Muslim also has another code. And that code is defined by the Quran and Sunnah. So just like it's nice to acknowledge the ideas of liberalism, but this isn't the only thing that we as Muslims live our life by, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the Quran and Sunnah. That defines morality as well. So to understand this, we'll go through two examples. Okay? So the idea over here is this, that liberalism leads a person to be free in all regards and pursue happiness in all regards. And what that means for them is that they have the right to pursue happiness, even if that means they say that what makes them happy is being married to somebody of the same gender. That's okay. And does liberalism allow for that? The answer obviously is yes. Liberalism will allow for that. They can be with somebody of the same gender. May Allah protect us. But the Quran and the Sunnah don't allow for that. So this is where there's a difference. So a Muslim, the main moral code that we have is the Quran and Sunnah. Anything else is going to be secondary to that. So now, if we're not grounded in the Quran and Sunnah, we don't let that define our morality, our sense of what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, then we'll end up in utter moral subjectivity. And then anything can go. So let me give one example of that. Does anyone know what the most remote island in the world is? Most remote island. And take a guess. Remote from any land. Fiji is very remote, but that's not the most remote. Say it again? It's not that. That's a good guess, though. Hawaii, it's pretty remote too, yeah. So the most remote island is called Tristan da Cunha. It's right in the middle of the Atlantic, very far from any land. Second most remote island is called Pitcairn Island. Pitcairn Island is in the South Pacific, very remote, very far from any land. It takes a long time to get there. Have to be in a boat for at least 7 days, have to fly into Tahiti. Just very crazy, long way to get there. Pitcairn Island. So Pitcairn Island was in overseas British territory. And it was established by people originally from the British Empire in the 1700s. They committed mutiny, they went there, long story. Anyway, what happened was that in the year 2006, the people from the mainland UK, they came to visit Pitcairn Island because it is an overseas territory of the UK. And what they found was that majority, if not the entire male population of the island, all of them were committing, you can say, transgression against women, against underage women. May Allah protect us all. So they were committing those acts. And it was almost the entire male population of the island. So then the British people, they said, well, we need to arrest you because this is a crime. And they said, oh, no, this isn't that long ago, 2006, so 20 years ago. They said, you don't understand. Although on paper we're part of the British Empire, part of the UK, but in reality we're so far away, so our culture is different now because we're so far away. We're in the Pacific Ocean, you're all the way in Europe. Our culture is different. We have borrowed from Polynesian culture. In our culture, it's okay for a person to do that. It's okay for a male to transgress the boundaries against a woman and do inappropriate things. It's okay for us. So you're trying to impose your culture upon us, but that's not, our culture allows for it, it's okay. What's interesting is even some of the wives of these males who are being implicated, they said, yeah, that's our culture. So very, very strange. But then now we understand that we may say, no, that's not right. It doesn't matter what your culture is, it's not right. But according to who? Because they're saying, according to our culture, it's okay. So we understand that if we remove any defining body that tells us what's right and what's wrong, then we'll end up in utter moral subjectivity. Because that means whatever a person thinks is okay because they say that's what seems like it's good to me. Okay, so this is an even more explicit example. So we know the 1930s and 1940s, the German army, they had done a lot of things, killed a lot of people. To them, they thought so universally it's condemned now. But at that time, they weren't thinking it's bad, they thought it's okay. Right? So then their culture said that this type of stuff is okay. But we understand that if we leave morality up to people to decide, and we ask everyone, do you think this thing is good or this thing is bad? We'll get different answers. And then now if we leave it up to societies, then we're going to end up in situations where people will, things that are objectively bad, like what I just said. People are going to say, I think it's good. And then whatever I think is good, that's what I should be allowed to do. So do we see this as a problem? So we understand that if we take away any defining body of text that tells us what's right and what's wrong, then we're left in utter moral subjectivity. And anything can go. So we need one defining body. And that defining body is going to be the Quran and Sunnah. The Quran and Sunnah already defines for us what's right and what's wrong. A few years ago, the Olympics happened in France, and then I just heard about this, I didn't watch it, but then in the opening ceremony of the Olympics, there was a lot of promotion of like same-gender interaction, that sort of thing, and it was very explicit, and the whole world was watching because the Olympics is a worldwide event. And the French people said, well, in France, people are free, so we're free to do this, so it's okay, we're celebrating our culture. The irony, though, is that, of course, France is a secular country, and France is a country that suppresses Islamic expression. We know that, like hijab, things like that. But nonetheless, they say France, everyone is free. So where is that drawing from? That's drawing from liberalism. And liberalism is the idea of everyone has a right to do whatever makes them happy. And keep in mind, if you remove any moral body that defines for us what's right and what's wrong, then we'll end up with just a situation like this, where anything can go. So that's the main thing over here, that we need something that defines for us what is right and what's wrong. And now that means that even if society, the trends of society change, and as I said, when I was young, it was considered to be something very bad, but then now it's considered to be something very good. This whole idea of same-gender interaction, may Allah protect us, but that's because society is always changing. So if we leave morality and what's right and what's wrong, our sense of good and bad, up to society, up to what the general perception is, then, I mean, you're not going to have grounding in anything, and then things are going to definitely change. So we need something that's timeless that grounds us. That's going to be the Quran and Sunnah. That's the first thing. Now the next thing is that, how did we get here? So before, when a person would, let's say, the person feels that they are attracted to the same gender, may Allah protect us, they would regard this to be a singular act. and they would say it's just an act. Now, that would be the limit of it. Now, all of us may have certain things that we do. Let's say somebody likes to eat hot dogs, another person likes to eat biryani. That's something that they do, right? No one looks at themselves as, I am a biryani person, I am a hamburger person. No one looks at themselves like that. That's just something that maybe last week they had a plate of biryani or they had a burger or something. That's all. So now, similarly, if a person did any sin, then that's the extent of it. They did that sin and that's about it. But now what's happened, though, is that in society today, that's not how a person looks at it. The first question that a person grapples with, if they feel that they're attracted to the same gender, is not that this is a singular act that a person may choose to involve themselves in or not, na'udhu billah, but rather they internally look at themselves, they ask themselves about their identity. That the person will say, struggle, or they'll ask themselves the question, are they a GAY? They'll ask themselves that, and they'll say, this is what I am. So now this has become a question not of a single act that a person is doing, but rather it becomes a question of a person's identity. Because now they regard this to be a very core thing to who they are. This is their identity, they are a GAY. And now that's why people say that, they're proud about it and things like that, because, yeah. So now one of the core ideas in our society, there are two things. One thing is identity, the other thing is authenticity. These are core ideas that permeate our society. So identity has become very central. So now a person, what goes on in their inner thoughts, that has become what we regard to be a person's identity. And then I'm just saying society, I'm not saying us as Muslims, that's just how American society is right now. So now I can think certain things in my thoughts, but that doesn't make my identity. That's just something I thought. But the way that society has progressed now is that whatever a person thinks and feels in their mind, that's their very identity. Some of us may have heard that there's even people that identify, there's a person that said that I'm a trans wolf. Now what does that mean? They said that I feel like I'm a wolf, I feel like I'm a cat. And then that is their identity, because they think that in their mind. This never existed before in human society. If you just think something, that doesn't make that you, right? If you're a human being, you have human DNA, you have 46 chromosomes, you're human. But then that's not what it is anymore. It's what goes on in a person's mind. So this idea of identity has become central to our society. The next thing is authenticity. We're not talking about Sahih Hadith over here. Authenticity, what it means over here, is that a person feels that this is my identity and I need to be true to this identity. So this is something that has become very sort of prominent in our society. To give one example, there was one time I was talking to a person, that person was getting very angry. They're yelling and shouting. I said, calm down, take it easy. There's no reason to get so upset, calm down. And there was another person there who said, he interrupted. And he said, you know what, I just want to tell you, speaking to the person who was getting angry, he said, I want to tell you, I don't have any problem with what you're doing right now. I was thinking, what are you talking about? I'm telling this person to calm down, stop getting so angry, and he's telling the person, I don't have any problem with what you're doing. He said, because, and then this third person, he said, you shouldn't have to hide who you are. If you're an angry person, then you shouldn't have to suppress that. You should be able to express yourself. So what he's saying, don't worry about what he's saying. I thought about this a lot. I said, why is he saying this? Where is this coming from? And I realized that this is something very deep in our society. The person who said this is Muslim. He probably didn't know himself why he was saying it. But it's the idea of authenticity. Because the person said that, when I said calm down, he said, no, I'm angry. This is how I am. I get angry about things. So the other person said, I don't have any problem with what you're doing, because you shouldn't have to hide who you are. So this is the idea of authenticity. If we think about it, we'll probably notice different interactions in which we actually see this in society, right? That people have this idea of authenticity, that whoever I feel that I am, I have to be allowed to express that. No one should tell me to suppress that, because that's who I am. So now putting these two things together, identity is what goes on in your mind, and what you feel you are, that's what you are. That's what our society feels right now. And authenticity, you have to be true to that. And that means everyone else has to accept that too. And then if someone else doesn't accept that, that doesn't just mean that they're rejecting an act that a person may be doing. It means they're rejecting that person as an individual. And now additionally, I said liberalism, I said morality, talking about identity, authenticity. There's another thing. Our country, unfortunately, has a very ugly history with racism, right? We all know this. Discrimination, racism, we all know there's a very ugly history with it. Now, we know the idea of rejecting a person on the basis of skin color, on the basis of anything else, is not good. But this is what our country has struggled with for many years. Still there, but it was much more prominent, though, of course, we know before 1960s, 1970s, a very big deal. So now, with that in mind, we know that a person, you're not allowed to reject somebody based on the skin color. That's very bad. But now what happened is that this group of people, they wanted to ride off of this momentum, saying that, well, we understand that people already, they reject discrimination. Now, a person, they don't choose their skin color. If a person rejects somebody based on their skin color, then that's very bad. They say you're rejecting the person. So what they did is they equated these two things, that what's going on in a person's mind, they decide that they're of a certain orientation, that becomes their identity as they think. Now, that's who they are. So if you don't agree with a certain act that they're doing, that means you're not rejecting that particular act. You're rejecting them as a person, as a human being. You're rejecting their right to be who they are. So that becomes a very big thing then, right? So now they say that, we don't like discrimination, and this is just discrimination, so you can't do that. Now, keeping that in mind, we say, whoa, how did it get so far? It wasn't meant to be like that. So this basically comes, in psychology, there's something called, in formal logic, there's something called the Mott and Bailey fallacy. Mott and Bailey fallacy, what it is that there's two statements. One is a strong statement, one is a weak statement. And then what happens is that you bundle them together. So now what happens is that a person will attack, let's say you disagree with the weak statement, and the person bundled them together, so they'll just defend the strong statement, they won't even defend the weak statement. But then since they tied them together and a person doesn't know the difference, then they pretend as if they've defended both statements. So the way that works over here is that you have this idea that, okay, everyone can tell me, is discrimination good or bad? It's bad, okay? We all agree discrimination is bad. So if I say discrimination is bad, is that a strong statement or a weak statement? Strong statement. If a person says that people who are attracted to the same gender, they have the right to be married to people of the same gender, is that a strong statement or a weak statement? That's a weak statement, meaning that in terms of, is it logically sound? Can it easily be refuted? Yeah, it can be refuted. So in that sense, is it strong or weak? It's a weak statement. So now, if someone tries to refute this, then what a person does is they bundle those two things together. And we say, no, a person doesn't have the right to marry somebody of the same gender. No, that's not right. That's not correct. And they say, oh, but don't you agree that people shouldn't be discriminated against? You say, yeah, I agree. People shouldn't be discriminated against. They say, yeah, but then you're discriminating against these people, so you shouldn't do that. That's why they have the right to marry whomever they want, even if it's a man. So that person is left confused. But what that person did is this fallacy, this logical fallacy, which is called the Mott and Bailey fallacy, meaning that they have two statements, strong and weak. We said the strong one was that discrimination is bad. That we agree to. The other one is that the weak statement is that people are allowed to marry somebody of the same gender. That's very weak, because we can refute it. But if you try to refute that, they'll hide behind the strong statement. They'll tie them together, and then you won't be able to tell the difference because they kind of sort of connect them together. So you try to refute the weak statement, they'll hide behind the strong statement, and they'll act as if their argument is untouched. So now, keeping all these things in mind, what we talked about so far, I know it's a lot of stuff. Now we talked about the idea of, number one, liberalism, and how that is the idea of freedom, and freedom of expression, freedom of pursuit of happiness. We said that if a person has a moral code that grounds them, and for us it's the Quran and Sunnah, then they can't unilaterally ascribe to that liberalism all of its implications. We said that we need to, if you leave people to their own devices for morality and letting just their own whims and desires determine what's good and what's bad, then it'll lead to utter moral subjectivity. So we said that we need something that grounds us, and that's going to be the Quran and Sunnah that grounds us, tells us what's right and what's wrong. And obviously over here the Quran and Sunnah tell us that this sort of act is wrong. We said the two main things in our society are identity and authenticity. And we said that the first thing that a person considers is whether not if they want to do a particular act or not, but whether they are gay. And that's the first thing that they consider. And we said that the idea is that they tie those two things together, the Mott and Bailey fallacy, with the idea of discrimination, and then a person is stuck. It's as if you can't refute it anymore. So that's where we're at right now. So where does that leave us? That leaves us in the story of Lut alayhi salam. So now Allah Ta'ala repeats stories of prophets throughout the Quran. But if we think about it, the number of prophets that are mentioned in the Quran are far fewer than the number of prophets that came. Okay? Allah Ta'ala says, وَرُسُلًا لَمْ نَقْصُصْهُمْ عَلَيْكَ. There's many prophets that we didn't even tell you about. Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولٍ. Every larger nation, doesn't mean every small group, every larger nation had a messenger. So there are many more messengers that perhaps we're not even told about in the Quran, we don't know anything about. But if you look in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala tells the same stories many, many times. So what are the stories that are repeated? Nuh alayhi salam is repeated, his story. What else? Musa alayhi salam is repeated many times. Ad, Thamud, their stories are repeated. What else? Lut alayhi salam is repeated. Nuh alayhi salam, we said. Shu'aib alayhi salam is repeated again and again. The reason is that these groups, they have sort of universal qualities. And these qualities, you can say, permeate all of human civilization. How is that? Nuh alayhi salam, what was their main bad thing that they did? I know there's many, but what was the main thing? They were, you can say, deluded by their societal status. أَنُؤْمِنُ لَكَ وَاتَّبَعَكَ الْأَرْذَلُونَ. Should we believe in you when the low status people follow you? So their societal status led them to become maghrur. They became deluded by that. What about Ad? The people of Ad, what did they say? مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً. Who's stronger than us? So they were deluded by their physical power. What about Thamud? وَكَانُوا يَنْحِتُونَ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا آمِنِينَ. They were engineering masters. So they were very intellectually gifted. So they were deluded by their intellect. So you see, all these three groups are deluded. Shu'aib alayhi salam, what was the main thing of his people, the people of Madian? Financial dealings, right? So they were cheating in their financial dealings. Lut alayhi salam, what about his people? Morally depraved. Now, if you look at these are universal qualities, aren't they? That can be in any society. So the style of the Quran is not to inundate us with details, but rather to mention these universal principles and then reiterate them again and again, such that they can sink in our minds. If anybody has ever taken a look at the Bible, once or twice I looked at it, and then I was so lost in the details. It mentioned like there's this group and they did this and this number of people and then this and this and this and this, and I said, how does anyone remember this? How does anyone know this? And the answer is, I guess most people probably don't. But with the Quran, it's not like that, because the style of the Quran is just to tell you about the main thing and repeat it a lot so it'll stay in our minds. And that's exactly what it is, and we see that these are universal qualities. So the people of Lut alayhi salam, they're morally backwards. And then that's why Allah Ta'ala tells us about them many, many times in the Quran. And someone may think that, it's not really. Let's say it's possible that maybe 20, 30 years ago, a person may have read the Quran and said, why is Allah Ta'ala talking about this so much? Because, no one really does it. It was happened at that time, and then, few small number of people, but no one even likes them, and they're hiding. So why is Allah Ta'ala telling us about this so much? Well, the Quran is very much a universal book. Now, 20 years ago, somebody may have been asking this, that, it's not relevant. But now we see, this is the most relevant story in the Quran, perhaps, amongst the perished nations from before. Perhaps the most relevant. So how is that? Well, the Quran is a universal, timeless book. Allah Ta'ala knows humanity. Allah Ta'ala knows what we need. And Allah Ta'ala talked about this so many times precisely because of that, because we need to hear this message. So now Allah Ta'ala talks about the story of Lut alayhi salam at least 8 times in the Quran, if not more than that. I was just counting it right before I came. In various surahs, Surah Al-Shu'ara, Surah Al-Naml, Surah Al-Ankabut, Surah Al-Qamar, A'raf, Hud, a lot of things. So what we'll do is, most of the time the story is relatively similar. So we'll just go through it in one set of ayat, in one of the places, and then I'll add if anything else is needed, inshallah. So Allah Ta'ala says, Allah Ta'ala starts out with the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, then moves on to the story of Lut alayhi salam. Allah Ta'ala says, I'm reading from Surah Hud right now, وَلَمَّا جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا لُوطًا سِيءَ بِهِمْ وَضَاقَ بِهِمْ ذَرَعٌ وَقَالَ هَذَا يَوْمٌ عَصِيبٌ. So Lut alayhi salam was sent to his people. The towns are that of Sodom and Gomorrah. Allah Ta'ala calls them وَالْمُتَّفِكَةِ أَهْوَى, the overturned cities. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So he was sent to these cities. They're near modern-day Jordan. So they were morally depraved. They would do a lot of bad things. Of course, the number one thing is إِنَّكُمْ لَتَأْتُونَ الرِّجَالَ شَهْوَةً مِّن دُونِ النِّسَاءِ بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ مُسْرِفُونَ. They would approach people of the same gender with desire. May Allah protect us all. So they would do that. So Lut alayhi salam would tell them about that all the stuff they're doing is wrong. وَتَأْتُونَ فِي نَادِيكُمُ الْمُنْكَرِ. They would do a lot of other things. They were highway robbers as well. A lot of inappropriate things they would do. So Lut alayhi salam was sent to them, and the people were not receptive at all. Eventually what happened is Allah Ta'ala sent angels to Lut alayhi salam to give him the news of the destruction of his people. So first what happened was that the angels came. And then Lut alayhi salam knew his people. He knew that, well, okay, these people are very bad, and then they'll try to harm anyone that comes and force themselves upon anybody that comes. So I don't think it's good for anyone to come. So then the angels came to Lut alayhi salam. He didn't know that they were angels just at that moment. Lut alayhi salam, Allah Ta'ala says about him, si'a bihim. He was very worried when they came, because he knew that the people would try to do bad stuff. وَضَاقَ بِهِمْ ذَرَعًا. So literally the Arabic expression is beautiful. Dhara means your forearm. Daqa means for something to be short. So literally it says that Lut alayhi salam, his arm was too short. In other words, imagine that you're trying to get something, you're trying to reach it, but you just can't reach it. It's too high. So Lut alayhi salam felt that what he wanted to do, he was unable to do. He wanted to protect them. He said, I'm just one person. How can I protect them when the whole city is coming and trying to attack them and force themselves upon them? I can't do anything. Well, I feel my hands are too short. I can't help them. وَقَالَ هَذَا يَوْمٌ عَصِيبٌ. He said, this is a tough day. And then the people came. وَجَاءَهُ قَوْمُهُ يُهْرَعُونَ إِلَيْهِ وَمِنْ قَبْلُ كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. They would do bad stuff before. He said, O my people, هَؤُلَاءِ بَنَاتِي هُنَّ أَطْهَرُ لَكُمْ. He said, O my people, these are females. Some people interpret this as my physical daughters. Wallahu alam, there's another interpretation that these are females. He said that it's better for you to marry females, not for you to go to males. So هَؤُلَاءِ بَنَاتِي هُنَّ أَطْهَرُ لَكُمْ. They're more pure for you. So fear Allah and do not disgrace me in regards to my guests. أَلَيْسَ مِنْكُمْ رَجُلٌ رَشِيدٌ. Isn't there any upright person amongst you? They said that, you know that we don't have anything to do with your daughters. We don't want anything to do with women. وَإِنَّكَ لَتَعْلَمُ مَا نُرِيدُ. You know what we want. Lut alayhi salam just felt so overwhelmed. He said, لَوْ أَنَّ لِي بِكُمْ قُوَّةً أَوْ آوِي إِلَى رُكْنٍ شَدِيدٍ. If only I had some support, if only I had some strength. Then the angels revealed themselves. They said, O Lut, Ya Lutu, inna rusulu rabbika. We are messengers from your Lord. لَن يَصِلُوا إِلَيْكَ. They'll never be able to get to you. فَأَسْرِ بِأَهْلِكَ بِقِطْعٍ مِّنَ اللَّيْلِ. So just leave at night. Don't look back at all. Don't go back. وَلَا يَلْتَفِتْ مِنْكُمْ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا امْرَأَتَكَ. So this can be understood to mean that don't look back, or no one will stay back except for your wife. إِنَّهُ مُصِيبُهَا مَا أَصَابَهُمْ. She's going to be afflicted by whatever they're afflicted with. إِنَّ مَوْعِدَهُمُ الصُّبْحِ. Their appointment is in the morning. أَلَيْسَ الصُّبْحُ بِقَرِيبٍ. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ أَمْرُنَا. When our command came, جَعَلْنَا عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا. We made the top of it the bottom of it. So Allah Ta'ala, one punishment is Allah Ta'ala flipped it over. وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهَا حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ مَنْضُودٍ. Allah Ta'ala said, we rained upon them stones that were of baked clay. مُصَوَّمَةً عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ. They are marked with your Lord. In other words, they're like homing missiles. Each one was marked for a specific person. وَمَا هِيَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ بِبَعِيدٍ. So if we read this, we say this is so harsh. The whole town was turned over, then they were stoned with stones. This is so harsh. So now it's important for us to understand that this is something that's very harsh. And that's for us to understand that this is something that we can't really be soft about. That it's not that, well, just love at the end of the day. It's okay. Not a big deal. I don't do it, but I don't have any problem with it. That's a problem. If we read how strict the Quran is, then we understand that this is something that is Allah Ta'ala is serious about. Something that's not a laughing matter. So now, practically speaking, what are some practical take-home points? Obviously, number one, we understand that this is something that's very detestable. And just as I said, as ubiquitous as children's programming is, with this message being communicated again and again that this is something acceptable, as Muslims, we need to counter that narrative. Okay? Number two, if there's anybody that's involved in it, may Allah protect us all, this particular act, then we don't condemn them as an individual. But just like anybody who's involved in a sin, we try to show compassion to them, and we lend a hand to see if they need any help. And if we condemn them, then where else are they going to go? So we have to make sure that we meet people where they're at, but then at the same time, we don't compromise in the deen. Okay, so we tell the person that the door of tawbah is open, just do tawbah. If a person is attracted to the opposite gender, we don't say you're free to do whatever you want. We say that you have to restrict yourself. So same thing, a person may have to restrict themselves. That's number two. So number three, perhaps even more important, and for many Muslims that either may be involved in it and think that it's not a problem, or people that may not even be involved in it but still think it's not a problem. They say, well, just love. I don't really think it's a big deal. This is a very serious issue because, as I said at the beginning, this can compromise a person's iman. This is dangerous to a person's iman. Why? Because the idea is that if something is explicitly stated in the Quran and then a person denies that, that can put them outside the fold of Islam. And that's very bad. So if there's anybody, it's important for us to talk about this because many Muslims that may think that it's okay, they probably just don't know. It's not like they're trying to do something bad, but they just don't know that it's a very serious thing. So it's important for us to talk to our friends, family, just in casual conversation. You don't need to target anyone, but that, this is something that we can't accept at all. Okay? And then now another thing that's also important. Now, some people may say that, well, the Quran, it's just kind of general. And so maybe what the Quran is talking about is when it's non-consensual, when the two people are not consenting. So maybe that's what the Quran is saying. But we have to understand that we have to, just like I said, our morality has to be grounded in the Quran and Sunnah. Similarly, our understanding of the Quran needs to be grounded in the Sunnah, needs to be grounded in the tafsir tradition. So if we remove all of this from the Quran, then a person may come up with these weird interpretations that maybe it's just when it's non-consensual. That's what Allah Ta'ala is talking about for the people of Lut alayhi salam. But that's not the case. Allah says, إِنَّكُمْ لَتَأْتُونَ الرِّجَالَ شَهْوَةً مِّن دُونِ النِّسَاءِ. You approach men with desire instead of women, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ مُسْرِفُونَ. That's you're transgressing. That's pretty explicit. It doesn't just mean non-consensual. It just means that you're just doing that. So we understand that our understanding of Quran needs to be grounded in the Sunnah as well, in the tafsir tradition. If a person removes that from the Quran, then that means that they'll end up coming up with way far off interpretations. We ask Allah Ta'ala give all of us tawfiq. We ask Allah Ta'ala protect us, protect our children, grandchildren, the society that has become increasingly accepting of it. That Allah Ta'ala preserves our iman. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyil kareem. Jazakallah. Why are they not opposing it? It's because that the idea is that the reason that I started in the beginning that our sense of right and wrong needs to be grounded in the Quran, it's because this is exactly what the Yahud and Nasara, the Jews and Christians have done, that they've sort of migrated away from that. So then I've seen interviews with Christians that someone will say, are you a Christian? They say, yeah. They say, do you believe in the Bible? And they say, yeah. And they say, what about this verse in the Bible? And they may mention something like this, like the story of Lut alayhi salam, Lot, as they say. They say, oh, that part, no, I'm not accepting of that. So the idea is that the main thing that grounds, let's say, a regular Christian today is, I guess, at least in the West, it's liberalism, right? And Christianity is there too. But when there's a clash, for many people, it's liberalism, liberal ideals that take predominance. Maybe some people it's not. Maybe some people it's the Bible and they reject liberalism in those cases, maybe. But for a lot of people, it's not that. So then, so what do they do about it? Some of them may be true to their scripture. Others will, unfortunately, they'll just essentially assert their liberal values over what their scripture says. I was talking to a Christian one time. He was studying in like a Christian alim program. There's a place in Chicago called Moody Bible College. It's one of the very famous seminaries for training Christian da'is and stuff. So I was talking to a person from there. And then I asked him, said, can you tell me what is Christian law? He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, what does a Christian do even? What are they allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do?" He said, "Jesus came to abolish the law. So Christian law is an oxymoron. So there's no such thing as Christian law." I said, "So can you just go and shoot someone? What if someone does that?" He said, "Well, I'll say they're not being a very good Christian." So, but then the same thing. Like it's paradoxical, because if a person says that I'm going to believe in what's in the Bible, I'm a Christian, but then something like this comes, either they're going to say, well, that part of the Bible is not applicable anymore, or they'll just say that I don't believe in it. May Allah protect us. So that's why as Muslims we have to make sure that we don't follow the same rabbit hole, and we make sure that we always maintain the Quran and the Sunnah as our grounding. Inshallah. Allah give us tawfiq. Jazakallah khair. Quran is that Lut alayhi salam was telling his people that they're wrong, and we see a lot of different instances of that. So Lut alayhi salam is saying, "Innakum lata'tuna rijala shahwatan min dun nisa." You come to men instead of women with desire. That's bal antum qawmun musrifun. That's transgressing. Bal antum qawmun tajhalun. That's ignorant. He says a lot of things like that. In وَتَقْطَعُونَ السَّبِيلَ وَتَأْتُونَ فِي نَادِيكُمُ الْمُنْكَرَ. Just a lot of different things. So we see that a lot of it was centered on da'wah, one-to-one conversation, maybe speaking to congregations as well, telling people that what they're doing is wrong, explaining to them in different ways. But it doesn't seem like the people were very receptive at all. But it seems a lot of it was just through conversation. Yeah. Allah says, فَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا ائْتِنَا بِعَذَابِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. That they said, okay, if you're really so truthful, then okay, just bring this punishment that you're talking about. So so a lot of it was conversation. So it's important for us also to keep in mind that this is the legacy of Lut alayhi salam. Allah Ta'ala tells us about it in the Quran. So I mean, we can try to tell people as well, just like Lut alayhi salam did. And just like Lut alayhi salam, he wasn't met with so much acceptance from the people, then we can, inshallah, I mean, even if people are not so receptive to us, if we ever talk about it, at least we've done our duty by talking about it. And then if not receptive, that's their choice. Yeah.
In the days of Prophet Lut, were there only gays, but there were lesbians? How come Quran doesn't talk about the lesbian, but talks about the gays only?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Quran doesn't mention that. So it's not clear. But one thing that we do understand is that Allah Ta'ala talks about the wife of Lut alayhi salam. So in, I guess in the story of Lut alayhi salam, Allah Ta'ala mentions his wife, and Allah Ta'ala says, فَخَانَتَاهُمَا. She disgraced, not disgraced, she belied their trust. So now this can mean two things. This can mean either that she was following the same thing as all the other people. That could be the implication, that maybe she was doing the same thing, meaning that she was lesbian essentially. Or it could also mean that she was supporting what they were doing, that she was like telling the people that, oh, there's some guests over here, you should come in. So we're not quite clear. So there could be a subtle implication that she maybe was that, perhaps, and there were women like that in that society, but it's not so clear. It could also mean that she was just supporting their actions. So, but it's not far off to think that that could have been the case as well, that women were also of that same nature. Why? Because Allah Ta'ala said we'll destroy the entire nation except for the family of Lut alayhi salam. So given, there's obviously women in that society as well, so it's not unlikely to think that women may also have been of that nature as well. But it's not explicitly stated.
this, or people that are close to them that are struggling
Yeah.
with this?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a very important question. Unfortunately, it's a question that we have to discuss because it is something that exists. May Allah protect us. So the situation is, number one, first and foremost, I think anyone that's struggling with this or has someone in their family that's struggling with it, they need to be dealt with compassion, love. Because what happens is that if they feel like sort of ostracized by the Muslim community and by their family, then they have a very large society that's willing to accept them and promote what they're doing and be proud about it and encourage that person to be proud about it. So if we ostracize them as Muslims and push them away, then they're only going to go to that, and that's even worse. And of course, there's many examples of Muslims who have done so. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I think people just need to understand that it is a test that Allah Ta'ala is putting them through, perhaps, and then they can be told that Allah Ta'ala tests those whom He loves, right? That أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء ثم الأمثل فالأمثل. If you feel that this is a very hard test, وإن الله إذا أحب قوما ابتلاهم. Allah Ta'ala, when He loves people, He tests them. You can say maybe this is a test of Allah to show Allah Ta'ala's love. But in order for you to pass this test, you can't succumb. You have to stay strong. So now, I think number one, practical measures is that just cutting themselves off from sort of access to those things. First and foremost, understanding that it's wrong. Because the first thing I said is that it's a theological thing. If a person feels that it's right, then that could put their iman in danger. So understanding that it's wrong. And if they understand that it's wrong, then naturally they'll feel remorse, and that sort of acts as a natural inhibitor because they'll think twice before anything. That's number one, treating them with compassion. Number two, explaining to them it's wrong, getting them to acknowledge that it's wrong. And then that's already half the battle. Number three, encourage them to do tawbah. Number four, practically assisting them in cutting themselves off from whatever those access points are. Sometimes it means that we may need to change our environment, right? Sometimes a person is with some people that might have promoted certain behavior. So we might need to change our environment. And the dalil of that is actually in hadith. So there was a person who had killed 99 people, then he killed 100 people. All of us have heard this hadith before. We know at the end of the hadith, the person was forgiven. But then the one thing that pious person said who gave him advice is that you need to just leave this place. So sometimes what happens is that our environment is something that promotes bad stuff. And in order to really actually change, we need to change ourselves, change our environment. That may mean changing our group from friends. That may mean even moving to another place, whatever it takes, right? That's number four. And number five, in addition to practical measures, maybe some counseling would help as well, like from a therapist or something. But number five, something that I strongly feel and strongly advocate is oftentimes people have specific struggles that they struggle with. And then oftentimes, many a times, those are, you can say, representative of low connection to Allah or spirituality overall. There was a student who was talking to me some years ago. He mentioned a lot of different problems that he was facing. And then I said, honestly, we can talk about specific suggestions for each thing, and we did. I said, the main thing is that I think you really need to just try to increase in your deen overall. We talked about some practical tips for that as well. And then the idea is that if a person develops a connection to Allah, it's like a rising tide. And the phrase is that the rising tide raises all ships. So now what that means is that if a person overall, they have all these struggles, but then they increase in their spirituality, their connection to Allah, then what will happen is that a lot of their struggles eventually become things that are sort of dissipate. So I told the student, I said, honestly, this is what I think it is. I think this is what you can do. So then now he, it's been a few years, he went and he found a teacher, and then he started to being very serious about his deen and stuff, mashallah. He came to me a month or two ago, and he's like, we had that conversation a few years ago. And I said, yeah. All those things I mentioned, they're just gone. And I said, I've noticed that you've sort of started increasing in your deen and stuff. He's like, yeah, it's just what you said. That just the idea of increased spirituality, alhamdulillah, it helps a person overall. So I think this is something that really needs to be done as well. It's an indirect approach. But maybe one thing is directly addressing the situation. Another thing is indirectly, if a person, let's say, tries to spend more time in the masjid, spends some time with good company, with scholars, goes for umrah, goes for hajj, tries to come for i'tikaf in Ramadan, travels for the sake of Allah, whatever it is, studies some ilm, some knowledge, then those things increase a person's connection to Allah. And what happens is oftentimes then a lot of the struggles, it becomes easier to deal with because you have a heightened connection to Allah Ta'ala. So those are some practical strategies. But ultimately, we all need to make dua for those people if we ever find anyone who's struggling with that. And then we thank Allah. If Allah Ta'ala has not tested us with that, then we need to be very grateful to Allah. Yeah, may Allah Ta'ala give all of us tawfiq, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.